Hey, well, I'm John Kane, and this is Resistance Radio. In case you haven't forgotten the name, this is Resistance Radio. I am John Kane. I am your host. Um, and look, I'm happy to be here. I really am happy to be here. And as I say each week, and I have to reiterate it because the appreciation that I have for having the opportunity to be on the air in New York City on WBAI and in Washington, D.C. on WPFW it's immeasurable. And I also can't express how important it is. I mean, it's important because I think I'm offering a perspective that you're probably not hearing in a lot of other places. Look, there's a lot of people who agree with me. I'm not suggesting that I'm like an outlier. I just think the angle and the view from where I sit and from my historical and cultural background is sometimes different than what you're going to get every place else. Um, not contradicting, but just different. And you wouldn't get that if these two stations, if these two Pacifica stations weren't airing this program, and the affiliates. And of course, I do put the show up on Facebook and on YouTube, and I post it up as a podcast. So there's any number of ways to listen to the program. I do appreciate those of you who have stepped up during our fund drives for both WPFW and WBAI. And I want to remind people, as Reggie suggested, you can donate anytime. We are in a constant need because we are listener supported radio. So we always need your support. That's how we do what we do here. For me, it is I'm glad that we were able to work through. I mean, for those who don't recall, I used to make the trip to New York every week. That's the way we did radio, right? We show up in the studio, we do radio. On the rare occasions that I'd record one and put it up, then I wouldn't necessarily make the trip. But to do the show week in and week out, I was making the trip. Then COVID struck, so now I get to do the show in much the same way, but I do it, literally 100 feet from my house. I've got a studio set up right close to my house, and so I'm doing the show live from my studio while I've got Reggie Johnson in the studio at WBAI, who graciously joins me. Look, I can't help as I'm watching everything that's transpiring since my last show, which happened to be on New Year's Day. It just amazes me because every time you think you've seen the worst that Trump and his administration can do, they never cease to to amaze you. So, Reg, what in the world's happening these days? Anything new?
I don't know. I mean, how do you want it? Chronologically or alphabetically? I mean, like, it just seems. It just seems to, there's just a bevy of stuff, and it's only 8 days into the new year.
He hasn't
Only
even
eight
completed.
days.
He hasn't even completed a full year in office yet. I mean, that's the other thing I think that people
He
people
hasn't
seem to
even
forget.
completed a full year in
He has
office.
not completed a full year, and he's like bombed 7 countries. He bombed Nigeria on Christmas Day, and
Yeah,
then two
yeah.
nights after New Year's Eve, he ends up bombing Venezuela. I mean, you can't make this up. And look, as much as I know people wonder how is it that I managed to laugh on a show like this where I talk about stuff like this. I don't want to make light, and I don't want to laugh at the absolute grotesqueness of what's happening. Look, I don't know what the count is, but I think it's over 100 that have perished in the attack on Venezuela on the third. You add that to another 118, almost another 120 that perished by being blown up in the water in boats. Some of them just fishermen. None of them have ever been substantiated as drug dealers, and I'm not suggesting that some of them aren't, or hauling whatever, but there's been no proof of that. So you've got over 200 people that Donald Jeffrey Trumpstein, I mean Donald John Trump is you got to throw a little Epstein in everything because they're trying to avoid everything Epstein. So
Yeah, I heard you. I heard you.
so this guy is responsible for over 200 deaths in and around Venezuela alone. That's not even talking about ICE shooting somebody in the face last night, and then Christine
Yeah.
Noem going on without any knowledge of what really took place, defending her agent. Obviously, don't have any real legitimate law enforcement training, which I think is somewhat suspect anyway. I mean, here's the crazy thing, Reg, I think you know this, but there is a Supreme Court precedent that has been established that basically defers to the judgment of cops when they use lethal force, saying that if they
Yep.
perceive there doesn't have to be a threat, there doesn't have to be anything that quantitatively could be construed as a threat by any other observer. But if the police officer with a gun in his hand just feels threatened, he is authorized to use deadly force. And the fact that this guy shot through the corner of the windshield and then through an open window twice as a car was driving by him, obviously made no effort to jump out of the way. Why? Because the car wasn't going, but it wasn't heading towards him. Her wheels were turned. She was trying to pull away, which is what they were telling her to do in the first place, which was to move her vehicle. And then when she saw that they were coming after her, decided, yeah, I better move my vehicle. And they shot her in the face. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Now I'm hearing people trying to compare this to to that lunatic who got shot at during the January 6th riot, whatever the hell her name is. I don't even care what her name is because it's irrelevant. But when I hear and the number of people, predominantly white men, that are defending this shooting and blaming this woman and are agreeing with Kristi Noem, saying that she was a domestic terrorist. This was a mom, for crying out loud. And she wasn't even brown. They are so dedicated to going after people that they'll even shoot white women now.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're on the wrong if your ideology is incompatible to theirs, then the card of whiteness will be revoked from you.
Absolutely. Your white privilege has been revoked. Absolutely. Your white privilege is gone and you could be shot in the face. And this is proven out now. This isn't hyperbole. It's not speculation. This has happened. It happens. And look, this isn't the first person that ISIS killed either. So, I mean, look, if you don't agree with this administration and you only have to be suspected of being, you don't really have to be even really be suspected of being an unlawful immigrant. They can just say that. You can be killed. You can be assaulted. You can be detained. You can be sent to El Salvador. I mean, this is like, an incredible, I mean, they make films. This is like a dystopian future, but it's now and it's here. And I'm sorry, Reg, I can't get by this. There's just one thing that really completely baffles me here. They voted him in twice. I mean, they voted him in, and of course he lost the popular vote, but managed to have enough manipulation and some, maneuvering machinations happen that he managed to win the presidency without winning the popular vote the first time.
The first time.
The first time. The second time he runs, he gets soundly beaten, but launches and causes an insurrection where people are killed at the Capitol, and the American people vote him back in. I mean, look, and I've heard people say, "Well, Musk bought the election. It's not legitimate." Whatever. Look, both sides, and I'm bringing this up for a reason because it comes back. I mean, both sides of the political spectrum are crying foul over the legitimacy of elections. Trump claims that he had the election stolen from him when he lost to Biden. Obviously he didn't win the popular vote in the first time. Some people are claiming that this last one, oh yeah, there was all the Russian meddling involved in the first election as well. Not to mention whatever the hell James Comey was on at the time. But so you have all of this stuff going on where people are seriously questioning the legitimacy of U.S. elections. And look, you can go all the way back to Gore and Bush. I mean, you don't have to start right now. And yet, part of the justification for attacking Venezuela and kidnapping, not capturing. Look, Nicolas Maduro was not a fugitive from justice. He was at home, likely in his pajamas at home.
In his pajamas.
I mean, this guy was home with his wife. He wasn't on the lam here. And look, New York, this court that launched this indictment against him, most of it isn't even going to hold up. But
that's not really why they went in there. That's not why they went in and killed, have killed a couple of hundred people. That's not why they've taken Maduro out. This was pure and simply regime change because this is what Trump wants. And the argument that he was an illegitimate president based on disputed elections, I don't know that that holds up. I mean, and that coming from a country that has had the last 3 elections disputed is a little ironic to say the least. I mean, and let's be honest here. Both parties of the United States have spent the last 25 years trying to topple first the Chavez, government and then Maduro government. They've launched coups. They've done covert and overt activities there in the country. They have done everything they could to decimate the economies in this thing. They've launched and supported opposition candidates. They've meddled in the elections. The United States has done everything they ever could have accused any other country of doing. So, and I'm not saying this to give an excuse or an apology to whatever Nicolas Maduro, not so much Chavez, but whatever they're accusing Nicolas Maduro of doing. Look, has he been unfair to opposition candidates? I don't know. I mean, if you've got significant evidence that the opposition candidates are being propped up by an adversarial government, I mean, what would I mean, Trump doesn't seem to have a problem with Putin when he literally murdered his opposition candidate, imprisoned him, and done. He has no problem with guys like Vladimir Putin, and yet you're going to suggest that somehow Maduro is worse than Putin? Worse than Putin? Really? You're going to suggest that? I mean, and of course, most Americans are so ignorant, they have no idea. They don't even know what socialism is. But the idea that ever since Chavez launched, first, secured the nationalization of their oil wealth because they were being screwed by American oil companies and others. Since he nationalized it and paid them off. I mean, in case people don't realize, regardless of what Trump or anybody else is saying, they went through an international process to make sure that any of the oil companies who were kicked out of the country were compensated justly. Now, those oil companies may not feel they were justly compensated, but a court of law, an international court of law, this was settled business. They were all paid for. So then the United States went about with sanctions and trying to do everything they could financially, financial sanctions, shipping sanctions, to destroy their oil economy, to destroy their lending and their borrowing abilities. Now they're going to sit there and argue, well, you got to understand that this country is in bed with our adversaries, China and Russia. Well, for one thing, I'm not sure how much of Russia is an adversary of Donald Trump. I'm not seeing a whole lot of evidence of that. I mean, well, I guess they did seize a tanker or something like that. Of course, I don't even know if that's even true, but they may have seized a tanker of oil. But you can't, none of this stuff lines up. I mean, the hypocrisy, it's not even irony. I mean, irony is kind of one of those things that make you say, Hypocrisy is just flat out lying. It's taking a position that is not just a cognitive dissonance issue, but it is an absolute contradiction. And that's what the United States, and like I said, I want to be clear, both parties of the United States have worked over the last 25 years to topple the Venezuelan government and economy. That's what they've done.
Well, John, let's not forget during that State of the Union speech back in 2018, and when Trump introduced Juan Guaido as being the legitimate Venezuelan president, everyone in that chamber stood up for a standing ovation. Okay, yeah. So there was no objecting force in that room during that time. And unfortunately, it included some of the people that we like to deem as heroic and the people that are on the same ideology, and that includes
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and all these guys. Yeah. I mean, look,
All of them.
I just listened to Mark Kelly, who's singing the blues about them taking his military pension and demoting him and that kind of stuff. But his initial comments seemed to justify taking Maduro out. I mean, he says the way they did it was wrong. The authorization wasn't there, but there are every American politician that I've listened to is still saying taking Maduro out was in the long run a good thing. If you're gonna characterize any part of this in that way, then you're giving Trump cover. I'm sorry, you're giving Trump cover.
Man,
And I'm not even suggesting that Maduro hasn't done anything that is questionable. I'm not saying that he hasn't. I don't know that he has, and I don't know if you're in his circumstance, a country that is completely under siege by the world's only or predominant superpower. I don't know that. Look, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't coming after you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just because somebody wants to call you paranoid doesn't mean that the United States hasn't done everything. Look, they've used their USAID, that USAID organization. They've used all kinds of their their so-called philanthropic organizations to covertly undermine this government. And look, that there was likely, and I know that Delcy Rodriguez has called for an investigation for anybody who was assisting the United States. They didn't get in there and take Maduro without having turned a few people. And
Absolutely.
And let me say this too: anybody who suggests that their Delta Force was met with significant resistance is just lying. They murdered people because there's no way that security force was engaged in a firefight where no one was shot as far as that Delta Force. The only people that said were injured were some that were injured in a helicopter or something like that. But to suggest that this force went in there, it had this major gun battle, and yet nobody, not one American. I'm not even sure they're not covering something up. To be honest with you, I find it hard to believe that not one American perished in doing this thing. And of course, let's also we haven't really heard the story yet, but Nicolas Maduro's wife was all battered and bruised. But Nicolas Maduro himself was walking with they violently, physically assaulted these two as well. And to say, they bumped their head. Wait a second. For one thing, I can appreciate Maduro bumping his head. That's a big guy. But this woman bumped her head going through the same doorway that her 6'4" or whatever the hell height he is, husband was able to go through. Give me a break. So, look, I just had to say some of these things. I don't know that if you are doing things that you think you can do within your legal structure, and we don't even know what that means anymore in the United States, but in Venezuela, to ensure that an election is fair, while many people on the opposition side will say that it isn't fair, what you're doing, I don't know what the right answer is there. If you've got a country like the United States that has been responsible for multiple attempts at coups in your country and has spent millions and millions of dollars trying to undermine your government, I don't know that you don't do everything you can to make to challenge your opposition, the legitimacy of and the legality of your opposition candidates. I don't know.
Well, when you have your opposition like Maria Corina Machado, who have vocally said it was looking for the demise and the takeover of the Venezuelan government, and was on a Zoom meeting with oil barons, from the major corporations of Chevron to BP to ExxonMobil, and with her worst impression of the Joker. And I'm saying this because this was a woman that was heavily wearing pancake makeup to make herself look a lot lighter than she is. And she is one of those individuals that just like with the Cubans, like to say that they are part of the white supremacist ideology. And here, someone like Maria even the people, even the white people would say who is working with her, they're saying, yeah, we'll work with you, but you're not white. But the thing is that that's the opposition. That's the kind of opposition that Maduro was dealing with. And I think that that's something that does not get discussed as
Well,
well
and
as,
it goes all the way back, right? I mean, all of the
right,
opposition you can't. I mean, that Leopoldo Lopez, this is a
right,
wealthy guy,
right.
educated in the United States, bought and paid for, through a whole lot of U.S. support, and so you go back election after election after election, going back, and you realize that the opposition candidate is always so pro. I mean, they're literally propped up by the United States, and
Right.
and we don't even know what that means exactly, because we know that it's true, but we don't even know what it means exactly, because the United States has its tentacles, into everything on this thing, and the fact that not only do you have, a guy like Hugo Chavez, who won with a lot of popularity in overwhelming elections, especially in the beginning, and then his whole socialist movement gets undermined by the United States, and so the United States says, "Well, look at what he's bankrupted the country." No, the United States did that. The United
Right.
States did that, and so you can't get away from all of that stuff, and so now to suggest that it's dangerous because China has its major investments in there. I got news for you. China has major investments in the United States as well.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, it's insane to suggest.
And they own the debt. They own the debt.
Yeah.
China buys the most government bonds. They're the majority shareholder of the government bonds here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that no one doesn't talk about that. And I just wanted to add one more thing.
Go
John,
ahead, please do.
In regards of the Venezuela thing, let us not forget that the Bank of England, the Venezuelan account in the Bank of England was seized. Okay, which is accruing interest, which is approximately around $50 billion right now. They don't have access to that as well. That's also another facet of the opposing force that Venezuela is going through.
I mean, they've had gold reserves seized. They've had oil seized. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. And of course, you can't talk about Venezuela without understanding that a guy like Marco Rubio has had this vendetta towards his so-called motherland, Cuba, which is very much, has a lot at stake here. But here's the other thing I got to say about Rubio, Miller, and that nut job who's the press secretary. Between those three and Trump, I don't know that I've heard the same thing come out of any of them. They don't seem to even have the same script in front of them. Trump goes off script. He doesn't. Some of the stuff that he says almost has nothing to do with what the. I mean, on one hand, Trump says I'm running the country, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and then Rubio says something else. I mean, these guys don't. There's such dysfunction in this government, and of course, the most evil guy of them all is that Stephen Miller guy. Holy crap! And of course, anybody who suggests that it's absurd, and look, I've even listened to Republican senators, that the Kennedy guy and some of these guys just say, "Oh, it's just the stupidest thing ever to suggest the United States is going to take over Greenland." Trump said it. I mean, he said it. He said this about Venezuela, and he did it. To suggest that he's not going to do something really insane towards Greenland is to suggest that a guy who tells you what he's going to do is not going to do it. I mean, and he's proved it over and over again that he's going to do some of the things. And I think the idea that he says it and then it gets blown off, I think he takes some of that stuff as quiet approval. And so it's going to be interesting to see what transpires there. I don't think Canada should feel safe. I don't think Greenland should feel safe. I don't. And here's the thing I got to tell you, and I say this all the time about Native people, but I'm telling everybody, do not let your children enlist in the U.S. military. Don't do it. I mean, and if they're in there, get them out any way that you can, because your kids are going to be used. They're going to be used, and they're completely dispendable. I mean, look, this is something that Trump is willing to sacrifice your children for his goals. I mean, and so don't do it. I'm just saying, don't do it. And you know, and for those of you who maybe you have your own history of being in the armed forces and you're proud of that history, we can debate that too. But as far as having your kids enlist in Trump's military, I mean, look, you've been warned about this since Eisenhower, and yet time in and time out, you guys, you know, there are people, and the worst part of it, Reg, is you know this. The most oppressed people, financially oppressed people, are the ones who enlist at the highest rate. Native people, black people, Hispanic people. Why? Because we don't have the same options that white folks have. And I'm not saying white folks don't enlist. They certainly do. They're the most up of the crew, right? But the
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
many people enlist simply because they don't have any other options. You turn 18, 19, 20 years old, or you've already tried your hand in trying to support a family, and you find it impossible because all of the cards are stacked against you. So
Yeah.
you see this as not only a means to have a sustainable, dependable income, but maybe a way to gain brownie points in a country that's treated you like crap. And I'm saying it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Just don't do it. I mean, look, I hate to do the whole show talking about Trump, but you can't not talk about what's happening between the killing last night in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and and the stuff that's happening, with Venezuela. Because look, it's really unclear what's going on now. I mean, on one hand, you've got Rubio saying, well, there's no reason for us to put boots on the ground. Well, how are you going to run a country if you don't? I mean, even the opposition is now united with some of the Maduro folks against Trump and this attack. Look, some of their family members were killed here. So you can't do what you claim you're going to do. Yeah, you can try to seize some boats, but I don't know what happens when you really start to seize all of the Russian and all the Chinese boats. I don't know what really happens there. And how are you going to hold up in court? Reggie, I don't even know how the charges against Maduro are going to hold up in court. It sounds like it's already unraveling a little bit. They've had to admit
Yeah,
that
it seems like
their terrorist organization is kind of a made up thing. It's just kind of expression they use. It's not real. So every legal analyst that I've heard look at this thing say they don't know how this charge can hold up. So
Well,
Maduro
yeah.
could
I
walk
mean,
from this.
Yeah. Well, considering that, when they initially accused him of being a narco terrorist, which that's a totally new term that was made up, one can just go simply into the not so recent history by, Hey, John, do you realize that there was a person that was in prison and that was recently released because of drug possession?
Yeah, but he wasn't the
by
president. He wasn't the president of a Latin American country, was he?
He was the president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez.
Yeah.
500. I couldn't believe this. 500
Tons.
No, 5,000. Yeah, 500 tons.
Tons of
Of
cocaine.
cocaine.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So how much Delta Force did it take to get him out of the country? Oh, none. Why? Because
Why?
they legally and lawfully extradited him through the courts of Honduras. They gave him up because they perceived him as a criminal too. So he was legally extradited. Now I'm not even saying those charges weren't somewhat trumped up, but I don't know. But what I'll say, and keep in mind, while he was the president of Honduras, Trump was throwing millions of dollars at him, millions of dollars. None of it was being properly accounted for. So he was totally funding this guy who turns out, as the courts have suggested, to have been a drug trafficker to the tune of 400 to 500 tons of cocaine into the United States. And Trump pardons him. Now, this is a guy who can't even go back to his country. So I don't know how he's living in the United States because clearly he's an undocumented immigrant. But I don't know if he's really an immigrant if you extradited him to this country. So I don't even know what his residency status is because he can't go back to his country. Well, he can, but he's got to go back to prison because they're going to lock him up too. So
Right.
any argument that Trump has made about killing people in the open sea or going after Maduro because of drugs is just a complete lie. I mean, you cannot, I mean, you can't pardon a guy who's responsible for trafficking at numbers that would pale any other, certainly there's no proof that Maduro was involved in trafficking any kind of drugs anyway. But even if you were to try to put numbers to what you're alleging, they would pale by comparison to Hernandez. They would absolutely pale by comparison.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
no, I mean, the whole thing is half baked. And look, I don't know what, I don't know how the charges are going to stand, but it seems to me that, there are some really good attorneys, American attorneys, who would chomp at the bit to defend Maduro here. And I don't know exactly what his legal team consists of, but keep in mind, his wife is a lawyer. I mean, these people know the law. They know international law too. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. I'd also like to hear the story on how physically assaulted they were, and and again, I gotta think that this Delta Force team went in and just slaughtered people. You don't go through and kill not just the 32 security, but I mean, again, that number is over 100 between the people they blew up by bombing Caracas and then going in after Maduro. It's over 100 people that have been murdered by this Trump attack. You don't come out of that killing that many people and not sustaining any casualties yourself unless you're just mowing people down. Just mowing people down.
Right.
So.
Well, let's not forget that one of the attorneys that is defending Maduro is Barry Pollock, and he was part of the Assange team that eventually got him out, and he's now living a life in Australia now,
right,
in his home country. So,
and he just Assange just launched a suit against the Nobel Peace Prize. Did you see this one?
Yeah, yes, he did.
Yeah, for issuing that Peace Prize to
I loved it.
to your girlfriend there.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I don't know. I'm going to call your girlfriend because I can't even tell her. I can never remember her name. But anyway. But no, I mean, this is just insanity. I mean, this, and look, we're not. I mean, I guess we're a week in, right? We're a week into the new year now, officially.
Yeah, we are now. It's day number.
Yeah, 7th.
Yeah. We're a week into the new year. Yeah.
Oh, happy freaking new year! Wow. I mean, and look, it can get worse because if you've ever thought for a second it couldn't, then you obviously got had a rude awakening the next day. I mean, it can always get worse, and it will.
This is the equivalent of us waking up and sitting down and drinking coffee and before we start the day. That's the equivalent right now. We're just getting up. If a calendar was a human being right now, it's just like, oh, we're just trying to get up.
Yeah, and the milk is spoiled. Your water got shut off, and you can't even heat up your coffee. So
this is not even a warm up.
Yeah,
they're just getting into their stretches.
Well, and here's the thing I gotta say. Look, and I said this before on the show, so I'm not saying anything new here. If the systems of checks and balances in this country seem to not be working, I gotta ask: did they ever exist? I mean, do they really? Is there really a system of checks and balances if Trump has been able to get away with this stuff? And look, he does this stuff, even if courts later say that you couldn't do that, it doesn't undo what he did. And he suffers no consequences. There are no repercussions directly attributed back at him for any of the unlawful stuff he does. I mean, this is as a convicted rapist. I mean, he is an accused pedophile. I mean, he's still hiding the Epstein files, and that, by the way, on the same day they launched his attack in Venezuela was the day that the court said they had to have the Epstein files released by. That was January 3rd. That didn't happen. I mean, it just keeps happening. So the question that I have is, what part of the government works? I mean, and now I hear people say, well, Trump needs to be impeached. Well, why? That didn't work. You did that twice already. That didn't seem to have any effect. So that's completely ineffective. Why is it ineffective? Because the GOP has completely gone cult. And so nothing's going to change. He controls the White House, Congress, the courts, and the military. You know what he doesn't control? The people. So yeah, I mean, at some point, we are literally talking about, civilian revolution. I mean, it's the only thing that's going to make any impact. And look, I'm glad to see people spilled out into the streets. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see the protests and that kind of stuff. But at some point, there has to be more. And here's what I got to say about about another subject and I'm not the one who first suggested this, but I'm totally with this thing. There should be a boycott of the Olympics and the FIFA games. And they should Kennedy Center Trump's butt on this thing. Everybody should every country should withhold their athletes from competing in the Olympics in Los Angeles. And California, sorry, you guys voted for him too. Maybe not as a whole state, but many people in your state did too. So Americans have to understand the consequences. The ones who supported Trump, that there's consequences internationally. So yes, cancel the Olympics, cancel the FIFA tournament, and you know what? I mean the Haudenosaunee lacrosse team too. The same ones who sent a team to perform in Israel during the height of some of the atrocities Israel was doing against the Palestinians way back when they were shooting nurses and reporters through a fence. Yeah, I was totally appalled that the team Haudenosaunee sent a lacrosse team to play there. And I'm saying, for all those people who think it's so great that the Haudenosaunee are finally going to play in the Olympics, play lacrosse, I say don't. I don't think that we should be exploited in that way. I think that if you're an American athlete, you should withdraw. I think if you're international athlete, your country or your own conscience should make you withdraw. That's my view of the whole thing. And I know that's probably not a popular thing because people think you should keep politics out of sports. These are international games. They're political. Sorry, that's what they are.
I will add on to that, John, and say that politics has always been in the sports. Always. It has always been there. And again, no one is ever opposed to the amalgamation of the U.S. military have invested time and money into the narrative with the NFL. No one ever talks about
they do the flybys. They fly their jets and their bombers and everything else over these every single time. They march them onto the field. They make a direct connection between the military and sports in the United States. And I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
And look,
absolutely.
And I'm not just talking about, the Colin Kaepernick effect for taking a knee during the national anthem. The overall impact that they tried, the melding and the merging of military and sports has been, look, the comparisons. I mean, they try to make football seem like it's a war, like it's a battlefield.
Like it's a war.
A battlefield.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I agree with you. I agree with you.
And just to further on with that, this past Tuesday, I was in a luncheon with some South African academics, and we was having a deep discussion about this, about how South Africa functioned versus how this country functions when there's ever any type of adversity. And I said, unlike South Africa, this country will go above and beyond to escape the responsibility of creating inconvenience, of creating a disruption within the status quo. And what I'm talking about is, don't use sports as a deterrent and as an excuse for you to watch sports because, it's a mental break. It's this. It's that. No. If you continue on doing the routine that you have been doing for so long,
then you're complicit.
Sorry.
Then you're complicit.
You are complicit.
Absolutely.
You are complicit. And that includes people here in this radio station. I'm not going to call them out by names, but they know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's not. And look, this isn't about being un-American per se. It's about challenging what this country is becoming. I mean, look, I don't hate Americans, but I got to tell you, I hate what the United States has done. I hate what it's done to Native people historically from day one. And look, I always got to say this. Anybody who thinks that Trump broke something, no, he didn't. This is the design. He's taken advantage of every loophole, including the Electoral College. He's taken advantage of everything built into the system for him to get away with what he gets away with, including stacking the Supreme Court, including how Congress operates in terms of stopping Obama from being able to put a justice up. I mean, the whole system is skewed in a certain way that has allowed Trump to have his way here. It's the system. People say he can break the law, but did he? I mean, if this guy has become the law because he's got a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, so they can decide what is and isn't law. Look, it's part of the reason. I'm gonna take it home a little bit here. Look, I talk about the authoritarian rule of the United States and their absolute abandoning of this so-called rule of law. Because when you create authoritarian rule that doesn't even have legitimate constitutional protections, which a lot of the authority that Trump is asserting is not constitutionally protected. It's protected by the current court, but the court is the same one that created that codified the doctrine of Christian discovery, a racist legal doctrine. It's the same institution, the Supreme Court, that codified the trust doctrine, which essentially has cast Native people in a subhuman class within the United States forever. Something we can't, and it's not that we are considered wards of the federal government because we are somehow mentally incompetent or physically disabled. No, it is a racist racial designation to say you're Native, you're a ward of the federal government. And you can't graduate from that. That's a Supreme Court that did that. The plenary powers doctrine, which fits right with the Monroe Doctrine and some of this other stuff we're hearing cited lately. All of these things are manifestations of the court, and it's about creating power that doesn't exist anywhere else. And if you are Native and you still are holding on to some sense that, yeah, but the United States does have a trust responsibility, how can you use the word trust with this government? And I don't mean just the current administration, but let's just say that.
Overall.
How do you, knowing what's happening right now, how does any person sit at home, Native or not, and say, oh, I trust the government? Really? What do you trust? What are you relying this trust on? I mean, and don't even get me going on religion. That's a whole nother issue. But if you're suggesting that somehow Congress is going to do its job, when have they? To the extent that they assert authority, it's only the majority of Congress that asserts authority because the rest of it is inept. And I'm sorry, the Democrats show time and time again, you talked about Trump's State of the Union address. You talk about how many Democrats are still trying to say, well, Maduro was a bad guy. So they continue to justify this stuff. And we see it time and time. There are Native people who believe that being wards of the federal government offers us protection. Well, if you're suggesting that the United States has a quote unquote trust responsibility, where are you going to base the trust on? There is no trust in Congress. There's no trust in the executive, and there's certainly no trust in the courts. So, I mean, and I'm not suggesting that everybody has to worry about being shot in the face, but I'm not suggesting anybody's really safe either. They're using the military and militarized police in ways. Look, when I was a kid growing up, there was no such thing as SWAT yet. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't this militarized division of a police force running around with automatic weapons and you know, military gear, tanks and armored personnel vehicles. There was none of that stuff when I was a kid growing up. Yeah, I know that means I'm old, but still, there was none of that stuff. Now every police force has a military or a militarized part of their force, including ICE. And of course, then you got the actual military and you've got the abuse of the National Guard, which now is really under question. I mean, who controls the National Guard in Minnesota? The president or the governor? I don't think anybody even knows the answer to that question anymore.
Well, that's a good question. That's what's something I've been saying for the longest that should be challenged. If how can the president can submit National Guard from another state to do the dirty work and to protect ICE? Well, why not that governor of that respective state use their National Guards to counter that? Let's make it interesting.
Which includes using the state's National Guard to oppose other states' National Guard from coming
Yes.
across your state
Yeah.
lines. No, I mean,
Yeah.
but the problem
Yeah.
is, where do you challenge this? In the courts? And I'm not suggesting that Trump hasn't lost some cases in court. He certainly has. I think he's going to lose this case against Maduro in court. But at the end of the day, when really when real atrocities happen at the hands of Donald Trump, he still never pays for it, because even when he loses in court, he's never held accountable for anything that he's done. So I'm sorry, the system is really broken. I mean, at some point, people are going to have to do more. And if you're going to sit at home and watch the Super Bowl or the Olympics or soccer / football, if you're going to do that instead of taking to the streets, then again you're allowing it to happen. You're allowing it.
And I will add on to that, John, is that and this is going to be controversial what I'm going to say here in WBAI because we were involved with this, but it has to go beyond state sanctioned protests, i.e., the No Kings rallies. It has to be more than that.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying calamity. I'm not saying that we should go out and just break stuff up. But what I am saying is that the forces has to be more disruptive and to let people know that this is not business as usual. And I think the thing is that one of the things that upsets me about something like No Kings, and I'm all for protests, I'm all for General Assembly, but when you're doing this as just an outing and not as
performative, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
As you're doing something more than what's next, that's where I have the problem.
I go back to one of the greatest pieces I ever saw done. You know who Michael Harriot is? He writes for The Root. I mean, he's
of course. The Root.
when before he was even writing for them, he did this thing where he down in Birmingham, where they were supposed to be blocking this big posh mall during the Christmas rush because it was I don't know, Black Lives Matter. I don't remember what but they were supposed to be blocking this stuff and nobody would step off the curb. So finally he laid down in the street and still nobody would step off the curb. He was the only person laying in. And they said, man down, don't shoot and all this other stuff, but nobody. And he did this whole, video with pictures and this whole piece, where he basically said, and nobody came. Nobody would step off the curb. They all just stayed on the sidewalk. They wouldn't block traffic. So but they were all taking pictures of themselves. They were all getting their selfies in, smiling with a sign next to them. So they all had their signs and they all had their cell phones out, and they all took plenty of pictures of him in the street. But nobody would lay down with him. Not a single person would come. Not a single person. The cops even came up and said, "Hey man, please, won't you just get up? Come on, we're all doing this nicely here." They literally were trying to sweet talk him off the street. That's when I learned who Michael Harriot was, and I started following his work. Some good stuff. He's written a couple of decent books. This is the problem. We are really willing to do stuff that's performative, and and use social media and all this other stuff. But are we really willing to vote with our dollars? I mean, are we willing to challenge the tax code? Are we willing to challenge some of this stuff? Are we willing to challenge the billionaires? I don't know. I don't know that we are.
Well, again, as bad as things are, and you said it during the beginning of this show, is that how bad off we have to be in order to amp the game up, in order to say, hey, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because the thing is that, and I really hate going there with this, but I just can't escape reality. And this is not me trying to disparage anyone whatsoever. But when someone like the person who was shot in the face and who was white, and clearly who was white, and 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 you're not going to get full out just bedlam happening at this point in time. What does it take? When Sandy Hook, when the mass shootings that were happening, with the overwhelming majority were white kids that were 5 to 7 years old, and no one didn't rise up for that. Man,
Infowars was still making money off of it.
yes,
I mean, this is the
yes,
craziness of the world. I mean, this is how much the United States is degraded, how much a certain segment of American population has degraded. And look, this isn't about Trump. I say this before, and I say this now, and not as a threat, but just as an observation. I don't believe Trump's going to make it through the year. I mean, he's fat, he's old, he eats like, he doesn't exactly have a great diet. I mean, and at some point, some of this stuff has to be stressful. I know he's pretty bothered by those people who canceled at the Kennedy Center. So some of this stuff's got to be pretty stressful for him. So I don't think his health is going to hold up. But none of this goes away when Trump goes away, because
absolutely.
not because I think Vance is a Donald Trump replacement. He'll be a lame duck, placeholder. But there's a major problem in the United States. And it didn't start with Trump. Look, the moment Barack Obama got elected and the whole Tea Party thing, the idea that a guy with color got elected as the president, it did nothing but anger a huge segment of American society. And that segment that anger has been fueled by guys like Donald Trump. And so, look, it's an ugly situation. It's probably going to get worse. We need to get ready for that getting worse. And I say we, I mean everybody. And I include Native people in that. Look, we've got to stand up more. And here's the thing that I'm going to say to my people is, we have to disassociate ourselves with the United States government, with Donald Trump. We got to distinguish ourselves by standing as a distinct people. I'm not saying to throw anybody else under a bus, but I think we have to stop saying we when we're talking about the United States. There has to be, and I think Americans need to do some of that same thing. They've got to start disassociating themselves.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that, because you got to make a distinction of what is right and what is wrong. And if you're including yourself as saying that we and doing this and all these horrible things that are being said and nothing has changed, what does that say about you?
Yeah, I mean, if you say if you're one of those people who said we attacked Nigeria on Christmas Day or we attacked Venezuela on the 3rd, why are you using we? I mean, that's all I got to say. Look, I know my time's up here. So, look, I want to thank people who listen to this program in New York on WBAI and in New York, in Washington, D.C. on WPFW. Thanks to those two stations, and thank you all for supporting those two stations. I'll be back next week. I'm John Kane. This is Resistance Radio. Thank you. Yahweh.